go.
Okay.
Okay, let me start. Thank you very much for spending the time with us tonight. We have a full program tonight. Let me start sharing the screen and you see what I mean. There you go here. And then, can you see the front page?
Yes.
Okay, so we are in business. We have a full program today. We have 4 presenters in this order: John, Sylvia, So-Young, and Gary. A little bit about the format of the meeting. It's going to be probably 60 to 80 minutes session today, 4 presenters. Each one will have 10 to 15 minutes presentations. Everybody else should mute at the same time. I'll be trying to keep everybody on time and provide 14 minutes warning time. It's going to be, I will facilitate and run the slides. You, the presenters, will tell me when to move forward. And if there is a clip to play it and so forth. So you're going to be in charge of keeping your time. I'll keep the overall time. The Q&A session will be at the end. If there are no any questions, let's start right from the top. So John, are you ready?
I am ready, yeah. How is everybody doing tonight? Oh wait, you're supposed to be muted now. I am John Pigoraro. I am I run Odd Pegs Woodworking, my side hustle, mostly building giant wooden monsters with the occasional fine furniture. Next slide, please. The first one, which is probably the longest story, is kind of the flagship piece that I built, The Devil of Lebanon Street. Originally back in 2017, I was stuck in jury duty. It was around Halloween, and I was thinking, how could I get more trick-or-treaters to come to our street? And naturally, I thought, well, I'll just build a giant 6-foot-tall wooden demon. That weekend, I cobbled together a hastily made head out of plywood, and I found some framing lumber to build a semblance of a body, and we covered it with some cheap Party City tablecloths and set it out front, and it didn't do anything, but it was fun to build. After about 2 years, the head rotted because, again, it was mostly just plywood, and the kids asked me to make another one. So I went out to the Home Depot, I bought a bunch of 2x4s, glued them together in kind of like a blockish shape, and I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to make a head. Pro tip: you cannot carve a head with a Sawzall. It is impossible. So I pried the boards apart and busted out the miter saw and basically just started making the shape of a head, making it up as I went along. It worked, and then proceeded to build the body. And then what we can see, you can go to actually the next slide, please. And this is what we ended up with. He's got PVC tubes for fingers. You can see there's furring strips for his wings and his loincloth. I used some wooden knobs for the eyes, and just a ton of spray paint and more screws than I care to count. Weighs a ton. He was up in our front yard for probably 4 years total, because I'm just too lazy to move him out back after Halloween. I think you remember right before Christmas of last year, there was an enormous windstorm that finally knocked him over, and at which point he now lives in the backyard, retired, overseeing all the raccoons and the rabbits and the squirrels. So that was the first one. Let's go to the next slide, please. Cindy the Ogre. Shortly after making The Devil of Lebanon Street, my kids were like, well, you should make something else. Why don't you make an ogre? Even though Halloween had passed, I was like, yeah, sure, okay. So let's go to the next slide. With this one, it's really not a lot of evolution. I tried to do some carving with the hand, with chisels, to give it a little definition. My original idea was to have both hands holding the axe, but I couldn't make the physics work. Basically, at one point, I had my son out in the driveway holding the axe with both hands, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I could do this. And then, as you can see, I actually could not. The other nice thing I like about this is that I did find use for the Sawzall and used that to attack the face to give him his dead left eye. He is still out in the front yard. He used to be covered in wonderful clematis, but my sister-in-law, when spring, decided to take it all out. So now he's a little naked. Next slide. And again, with as with the other one, this is primarily framing lumber for construction, furring strips every now and then for the smaller detail. At the start of the pandemic, I tried my first more human figure, and this is the knight. This is just a close up of the head. I don't know if any of you watch the cartoon, The Clone Wars, or Star Wars Rebels. You can see there's a lot of that style, that blockish style to this design. Really had a lot of fun making that bushy mustache. Let's go to the next slide to see some more detail pieces. And here you go. One of the problems that I had with this design was the miter saw at the time only beveled one side. So I found out the hard way that I couldn't recreate a lot of the cuts that I made on one side for the other without risking fingers. So I opted to just kind of spice it up a little bit. And then that's why it was purposely different that way. I guess after 3 years, I could still build him a helmet. It is technically on the to-do list. I'll be honest with you, it's probably not going to happen though. But he also lives in the front of the house. Okay, next one. So while doing all this, our house had the reputation of being the one with the really strange sculptures in the front. And around this time, the city of Melrose had a call for public art. My wife, who's an artist, she said, well, you should probably throw your name in the hat. And I was like, well, there's no way in hell the city is going to be paying me money to build a giant wooden monster. And she's like, well, try it anyway. So I shot off a proposal to them, said, I will build you a dragon. It will be giant and awesome. And then they called my bluff. So in fall of 2020, once again, set to work. Let's go to the next slide. And built the dragon. He is currently, if you're familiar with Melrose, his original spot was on Main Street by the pavilion by the Bank of America. After a year, the city decided to move him down to the dog park behind the high school. So he is there now. And he was, it was a lot of fun building this piece because, you know, the original one, the first three were basically prone statues. And with this, I had to figure out wings, I had to figure out legs, how I could make something with a little more style, a little more grace, and not quite so blockish. Struggled mightily with the head. My son, who is probably my worst critic, I'd show him a design, he'd be like, yeah, no, it looks too much like a bird. And then I'd look at him and was like, you're right, it does look too much like a bird. And eventually settled on this. And yeah, this was my first commission, and it was the kids around town loved it. Yeah. And then I recently had to do some updates to him because of vandalism, but we'll get to that bit in a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. While I was building the dragon, in basically my driveway, my shop is in the garage, and the workspace is in the driveway. This little old man who lived down the street kept stopping by and talking to me and asking me about, it's like, what are you doing? Did you build this other stuff? Never once did he ask, why are you doing this? Which I really appreciated. And then eventually he's like, look, will you build something for me? And so it's like, I would love to build something. He's like, I want something for my garden. So we were talking and I wrote him a proposal. Originally it was going to be a jackalope, which is a rabbit with antlers. And I gave him the proposal and he said, no, I don't want this. I want something weird. So I said, all right, give me a day. Went back, got out my D&D books, found a picture of a Nothic, which is a monster in Dungeons and Dragons, proposed that to him. And he's like, that's what I want. Let's go to the next slide, please. And then from there, made this guy. He was a lot of fun to build. I love the head. I think at this point, what you can see in the progression of style is that the proportions are a little bit better. The teeth turned out a little bit better. The expression is just, I just like the expression. And the last I checked, he was still hanging out in a garden down on Lebanon Street in an apartment building. Next slide. While I was building those, I was asked to build another commission, but renovations in the house got in the way. But finally, last year, I was able to do probably my biggest piece, and that is the Demon Bear. The ask from the clients were, they live up in New Hampshire, up in New Boston. The ask was, we want something so when people can find our house, they know to take a right at the whatever it is. And we also want all of our neighbors to know to stay away. So what we decided to come up with, working with both of my kids, was a demon bear. And let's go to the next slide, please. And there he is. He's about close to 7 feet tall. As you saw on the previous slide, his mouth opens up like Predator. He's got 2 giant scorpion pinchers coming out of his shoulder, and he's huge. One of the things, as you saw on the previous slide, I really nailed the tongue. I'm trying to be humble about this, but I'm really happy with the way that turned out. The snout, I love that too. I think I'm going to go back up there when I get a chance and give them new front paws, because I'm not entirely sold on that. But one of the other things that, as an artist, that I felt progressed here was the arms and the legs, because with all the other ones, the details in the head, because my motto is, if you can't make a good head, the rest of it's gonna fall apart. It's not gonna be worth anything. So here I got the head, but my son was like, well, you can't keep just using a 2x6 and calling it arms and legs. So he's got some big beefy arms here. He can come apart, but not very well. And the other thing that I kind of turned the corner with this piece as well is that, if you noticed with the knight and Cindy the ogre and the devil, the feet basically had some garden 4x4s kind of keeping them propped up, whereas here I made a bona fide stand, and it's the detail of the feet is kind of lost in the other ones, whereas here you can see the whole kit and caboodle. And then next slide. How am I doing with time? I kind of feel like
you have another 4 minutes.
All right. I feel like I'm talking like an auctioneer. In May of this year, my friend Chris said that one of the local grade schools was looking for a sculpture for their mascot, the Husky. And it's tradition that all the grade schools in Melrose, the graduating 5th grade class, will present a gift. And she's like, you have no time and they're not going to pay you well. Do you want to do it? And I said, sure. So this one was challenging because of the time frame, and also because it was an actual bona fide real thing. It had to look like a dog. I couldn't fudge it and say, well, of course that's what a demon bear looks like. Of course this is what a Nothic looks like. So next slide, please. And so there he is, the Horace Man Husky. This, like all the other pieces, is made of construction lumber. I drove around town and found construction sites and went through their dumpsters and grabbed what I could. I will give credit to my wife for the fantastic job painting the eyeballs. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was very quick to make. I will point out with the tail, his tail curls downward. And that is because this was a present from 5th graders. And if his tail went upward, I probably would have had to carve a butthole, and that would have caused massive pandemonium. So know your audience. And he was presented the beginning of June, and by all accounts, they love him. And then let's see, what's the next slide? So as I was saying, I haven't been doing this very long. I am entirely self-taught. all the woodworking that we've done in the house was entirely self-taught. So every time I'm doing this, I'm making it up as I go along. And here's just some of the instances where I feel like I've improved. With the Husky, you can see the full body in this part. I finally got around to covering all the screw holes, which gives it a much nicer appearance. I started using an angle grinder to add some contours. I have a delightful bandsaw that helped me make the tail and the ears, and the legs in particular. I'm very proud of with this piece because, again, it had to look like a dog. It couldn't just be straight pieces of lumber. There's a close-up of the tongue from the demon bear, as well as in the center, how the arm was constructed. Basically, both arms, when you take off the side pieces, you can unscrew them and just take them off for easy transportation. With the dragon and the devil, those were enhancements after they had been damaged. So some vandals had knocked over the dragon. So the little wing claws up at the top were lost. So I just made new ones with it. Again, a little more contour and a little less blockish. And I figured with the Devil of Lebanon Street, since he has that wonderful 6-pack.
1 minute, John.
I'm sorry?
1 minute, John.
All righty. And with his 6-pack, he deserved a little more definition in the arms. And then I think the next and last slide is when I'm not making giant weird stuff, I also made a chess set, which is kind of like sculpture. And this is just an example of some of the woodworking that I also like to do. And the interesting thing about this, again, working with my son, is that we decided that the pieces had to be the same from any position. So the knight in particular was a challenge to develop. And there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Very nice. Sylvia, you're next. Ready? Do you need to unmute yourself?
Yep, I've got that now.
Okay, first slide.
Okay, so I'm Sylvia Vandersloot. There should be a cover slide there. There we go. Hi, everybody. You can go to the next slide now. So my work speaks of love, illness, death, and transformation, and is grounded in my personal story of service. Some recent motifs that I've used have included home as playground, sanctuary, and crucible, constructed resting places, and boats as vessels for life passages. Next slide. I'm speaking tonight about selected work from my current project, Lemon, which means threshold. And I'll start out with places to rest and reflect. Dimensions and titles of each piece are on the slides. These small, fragile constructions remind me of the fragility of the body. I made nested vessel from many layers of folded and glued newspaper, transformed with acrylic and sand. It's very dense and complex, yet compact and quiet. Next slide. This piece was the first of several resting platforms made of newspaper, insulation board, acrylic, and cradle frames. I wanted to create a spare environment that offered emotional nourishment. There's the one on the right is a detail. Okay, next slide. This piece. Pardon? Can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. So this is another resting platform. This piece was the second in the series. Next slide. And the third in the series.
You should say next whenever you want me to advance it.
Okay. Next. So continuing with the Lemon project, I then started thinking about the nature of transitions, and a boat emerged one day as I was working. made of many folded layers of newspapers. It's empty, but it's full of memories. It was important to me that this vessel be a simple structure, a metaphor, honoring the need to accept change and move forward. I called it Passage. Next. With Passage 2, the boat started getting larger. This is 33 inches long, formed with brown paper bags, acrylic, and sand. Its surface is complicated with pieces of wasp nest, wood chips, and plants. Next. Passage 3 lifts into the air. It's made of branches, paper, plaster impregnated bandages, sand, and acrylic, and measures 50 inches. Next. These are details of it. The left-hand photo is a shot from underneath, and the one on the right is from the outside near the end. Next. I was using jewel colors reminiscent of ceremonies, and I wanted to elevate the ordinary boat to a ritual-like status by not having steering mechanisms. The boats suggest acceptance of change and moving forward. Next. Passage 5 is a 4-foot-long construction of wire and plaster bandages. 4 feet long, did I say? Yes. Next slide. I sewed several linen cushions along the bottom with waxed twine, allowing the framework to show, which was very important to me. The shot on the right is looking inside of it. Next. I secured twisted vines with reeds to the boat. Next slide. Here's a studio shot of the boat I'm working on now. I've scaled it up, 8 feet long. I'm interested in creating a skeleton-like structure, and I have started with wire. Next. So next I'm going to show you some concept sketches of how I envision an exhibit of these boats. I want to create a space for contemplation with a collection of these ethereal boats hung at chest height. The space I'd like to use is a conservatory and a local botanical garden. Next slide. So the next 2 slides are more concept sketches. Okay. I used the image of one of the smaller boats, enlarged it to represent the 8-foot-long one that I eventually am going to finish. Okay, and that completes my presentation. Thank you.
But thanks a lot. We'll move to the next presenter. I believe it is So Young. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so just let me know when to move from one slide to the next. If you have a clip embedded in your presentation and you do want to play it, let me know. Just manage your time. You have 15 minutes. Hold on for a second. Let me reset the clock.
Hello, my name is So-Young Park. I recently graduated MFA sculpture program, Boston University. I would like to appreciate New England Sculpture Association to giving me chance to presenting more, and it's my honor to be here. Thank you. Next. Making the object naturally transport us to the world of illusion. My work is rooted in mutable relationship between human and nature and technology. I use discarded plastic and manufactured component and positioning them alongside the biodegradable material. Prior to Eden Garden 2022, installed at Piano Craft Gallery, Emerson College Media Gallery. The installation created imaginary utopia and dystopia by twisting subject matter and using abstract symbolism. Next. I collected plastic and manufactured components from street dumpster livers and beaches. I made a structure with the cardboard and covered them with the plaster and embed found the plastic in them. I also use biodegradable and eco-friendly materials such as mushroom, bloodworms, and living plants. Next. This is the worm composting pot. I made a soil with the wood shop sawdust, wet paper, wasted food, and 100 worms. After 8 months, I sent them to analyzing the soil and found that 83% nutrition was sufficient to grow plants. They don't even smell rotten while composting food. Worms are miracle creatures to create soil from waste. Next. Next, please. Yes, please play the video. This is the video. Would you play for me? This is a video of installation. I'm interested in creating action between elements that enhance the spectator's senses experience, such as sound, textile elements, smell, humor, and emotion. Curiosity through immaterial ingredient is a form of exaggeration of a physical element. Next. In my studio practice, I have a technique to manipulate trace into the usable material. For example, when I glue 4 sheets of cardboard together to make the material stronger like a plywood uses. I also crochet with the plastic bag by using them as the thread. Water decayed plastic tile will enhance the structure and add the color to the structure. Next. This is the cool little oasis and water fountain. Yeah, we can go to next. It is a similar way to manipulate cardboard, but this time I cover with a newspaper, sawdust, and wood oil stain to color the structure. Many people say it looks like matter. Next. I'm interested in making sculpture holding a life form. Next. This is a piece of MFA show. I think that it purposes the material and transform into the different surface that brings back the value of an object that were once forgotten and abandoned. I'm interested in continuously conducting material by covering surface and revealing a purpose. My physical interaction with the materials I gather in my studio practice condense data, information, consumer history, and the mystical quality of a found fragment of life. Next. This is a collaboration piece with Chess Him, who is a founder of a Berry Fungi ORZ, biotech company based in Boston. He is a 4-stage cancer survivor. He profound the discovery with him to develop Berry Fungi, a company that would allow him to support himself and nourishing his community through the healing power of a mushroom. Next. He created huge king oyster mycelium block in the shopping cart, and I made a base for mushroom tower. During the exhibition, mushroom grow out of the tower and dry out in the end of the show, which means the life cycle of nature. Our piece represented the rebirth and recycling of nature with a prize waiting to emerge. Next. This is the installation book called Distilling Emotional Urination 2022. I had a challenge to work in such a huge space, which is not in the gallery space, but it was fun to positioning each element to creating narrative. Next. This is the piece in the Daisy show in Boston University. You can play the video, please. Thank you. I try to make structure that can be integrated with the architectural space, and the video mapping on the structure. Every element of a piece held together like puzzle. You can go next. And I didn't use any glue to put piece together. Even though they are like a little bit slant, interestingly, that is the best to shape the whole together. Yes, you can play the video for sure. Yeah, so I put the number of each piece to like a puzzling, and it was like cardboard is the best material for me because it's very light, and then I can scale up as much I can. So it is like a great material for me to building the big structure by myself. We can go next page. This is a recent piece at Piano Craft Gallery ending in the July 1st. When I put the living plant in the sculpture, there was a problem to watering during the show. So I tried to solve my problem to creating watering system, automatic watering system. This system is still process to development, but like my goal is creating watering system for the plant, and that can be managing with a cell phone app to creating real market value for my sculpture. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot. Nice job. And we'll move on to the final presenter today, Gary. Are you ready?
I think so.
Hold on for a second. Let me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. How y'all doing? My name is Gary Tracek, and we'll just go on and move on. Here we go. And there's my Instagram and website. Not only am I an artist, but I'm a firefighter paramedic, and I do air rescue. So I thought I edited out the PowerPoint to some certain slides, but I don't know. We'll see about the timing on this thing, but I apologize if it goes. We'll keep it under 15. I'll do my best. But next. On the right, you can see that's a photo that was shot for a magazine, and it was American Airlines. They did a story on me for Art Basel, being a Miami artist. So that was a pretty big honor. And then on the left is my other job as a firefighter paramedic, and that was a fire out in the Everglades that was not supposed to jump chrome, and it did. We couldn't stop it. So I just took pictures and enjoyed the heat, and we'll move on. So next. This is a quick video. It's actually 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So do you have sound? I don't know what happened there. V, you didn't play the sound didn't go on that video?
I mean, that's what I have, but I don't have the sound associated with it. Sorry.
All right. Well, we'll go to the next slide. It's no big deal. This is the process of my work right here. Is pretty much I do stainless steel kinetic sculpture. So what I do is I cut, taper, and polish out stainless to a mirror finish, and then I'll just use any method to bend. This is one of them. When I'm doing big sculptures, usually 6 to 8 feet, up to 10 feet, I will do pretty much a big bend to get a shape that I want just by using my body weight and slowly bending it. Next. These are some of the techniques I use. So you can see on the left side right there, that's aluminum, which is a little bit softer than stainless steel. So I'll stick the aluminum, they're circles, and I'll stick the stainless steel in between it. And on the right side, you'll see some 2x4s, and I'll sandwich it. And from there, what I do is just give a twist. And what that does is it gives me natural twist in the metal that I want, and it makes it go higher and lower. Next. Again, on the left side, this is when I had my other studio here in Miami, and I was working outside. So it's a big tiki hut, and this was a big structure I was working on. So you can see on the right-hand side there, some of the metal I work with is a little bit big, and I work pretty much out of my garage, and I have another studio, but it's kind of showing you the different placement. But the technique is always the same. It's a very simple technique of just using shapes and wrapping metal around it. And when you do that, you can, define all the shapes organically. Next. You could play this. This is a time-lapse video, and it just kind of give you an idea of what I do in the studio. So you can see that, the 2x4s, I just keep twisting the metal and getting the shapes to what I want. And the metal is pretty pliable. It's thick. It's 1/4-inch stainless steel up to 3/8 I bend. But whenever you have a 6, 8, 10-foot piece, it's not as hard as you think it is to bend. So with enough leverage, you can move the world, they say. Next. Next slide. So now you see, these are my typical kinetic sculptures. So on your left, that's infinity. So it's kind of creating a Mobius strip. There's no beginning or ending of line. So I had to put 2 axes in it, and I will show you a video of it moving. And our right-hand side is a sculpture titled Fuoco, which means fire in Italian. And that kind of combines the elements of my life of growing up in Italy, studying Renaissance art in Florence, and then incorporating kind of like the flames of fire into my work. Next. And these are a couple other typical pieces that I create. And next. Okay, you could play this video. So that's how you move my sculptures. They're not, I don't use motors or electric. It's just a very slight touch of your hand. So the stainless is bent, and it's all done by trial and error. And what I do is I just keep tweaking the metal until I find a good balance point. Next slide. There we go. You could hit play on this. This is out on Fisher Island. Usually my work does not move in the wind. This does capture some wind. None of my sculptures are intended for wind to move it. But what the deal is with this piece is that they want it on their balcony, so it does capture wind. Most of my work has a lot of negative space, so it will not. It's not intended to capture wind because I don't have any concave or convex points on the stainless, and you see how much negative space is in there. So the wind kind of shears through it. Next slide. This is a University of Pennsylvania commissioned me to make a sculpture for the Harold W. McGraw Prize in Education. And I had no idea they were going to do this, but I flew up for the gala and they honored me. So it's kind of shocking and humbling, but they did make a video. So if you go to the next slide and hit play. So this is a video that they made, and it was 3 recipients in the world actually every year get the sculpture, and they get $50,000, and they're for people who devote their lives to education. So a lot of people that are professors at Stanford, Harvard, or whatever it may be, that committed their life to education. Next slide. This is something I really believe hard, and I try to encourage all sculptors, all artists, and actually everyone in this world to give back. And that's what I'm all about. So this piece was created for an organization, and what they do, it's a tissue bank, and it's all based on organ donation. So I created an abstract heart, and I put the color on it. So you go to the next slide. This is another, originally it was Operation Smile. So I worked with this famous pop artist named Romero Brito here in Miami about 20 years ago. So I don't look anything like that photo on the top left, so don't be fooled by it. But it was very humbling experience, and I was very honored because he was very famous at the time, and obviously he's much more famous now. But he never really worked with sculptors, and I had him paint on my sculpture, and then we auctioned it off. So every $500 can create surgery for someone who has cleft palate syndrome. Next slide. This guy on the right received 5 organ transplant, and he's holding the sculpture that I created. So the sculpture stays at University of Miami, and on the left side, they gave me that piece of paper you see there, and that was their logo. So I walk by it every day, and I had about 8 to 10 weeks to create something, which is not ever enough time for me to do something. But I was just inspired by my friend Eric on the right, that he received 5 organ transplant. He's alive and kicking, and I knew I had to do something to honor all these people that give their organs, and it's a very, very wonderful experience. So that's what I walk by every day, and I sat up for 16 or 18 hours, came up with the concept, and did not sleep for a day and a half until I came up and welded it together. Next slide. This is my breast cancer sculpture. So they're not for sale. No one gets them unless they pretty much know me. And what I do is I've had at least I've probably given away 10 or 12 of these sculptures just to people I know or friends of their friends that were afflicted with the disease. And a lot of close friends of mine had it. So that's why I felt that I need to do something. And this is where it shows you that money's not important for the work. It's just how you feel inside, and giving back and to see the smile. That's my wife's best friend. And she's, good now, she's cured, but just the struggle of the chemotherapy and everything, and watching these women go through it. Next slide. There on the left side is a piece, and again, another friend of mine. I have a lot of friends. Her son, they had a struggle with autism, and I wanted to do something about it. So that's how that piece came about, for Autism Speaks. So I put the puzzle piece in there and had it painted. And I've given several of those away just to schools. And recently I sold the sculpture to, and she sat and cried and was telling me about her struggles and how much better she is now. And it just moved me. And I had the metal at home. So when I brought the commissioned sculpture back to their place, I gave her that sculpture. So we sat and boohooed for about 10, 15 minutes. And those feelings really, they stay with me. The sculpture on the right was for the Miami Marathon. And I created that sculpture for the ING Marathon. So what ended up happening, I have some crazy friends here that are other artists that are harassing me, but the girl on the right was run over at age, I think it was 3 years old, and she'd never complained or anything. And she came up to me and wanted to be on my sculpture, and I said, listen, I'll never win a marathon. So the only way I'm going to get on a marathon sculpture is to create it. So that was for the ING Marathon, and it spins on the top, and that's what they wanted to do. So I was very moved by that, and being in Miami and being born and raised in Miami, I felt that I needed to give back. So I donated that for the marathon. Next slide. Some of the charities I'm involved with: National Foundation, Young Arts, Operation Smile. I did a piece for HIV research, breast cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, autism. And I just don't stop. I think that it's very important that we all look inside of us and be thankful for what we have. and the ability to create. And that's the way I look at it. I have the ability to create so I can give something to people. And that's the way of giving back for me. Next slide. This is a wall sculpture I made, Miami Beach. On the left side, I just put blue tape on. It's something it's atypical of what I create, but I felt challenged and I said I can do anything if it's stainless steel. And I failed the first few months until I figured it all out how to make it. Next slide. And this is how I did it. Welded stainless steel, and those are the tips I grinded out and made them on 45s. And this is kind of the process of piecing together this work. Next. And this is the finished piece. It's 15 feet. It's in Miami Beach. And I really love the piece because it's kind of more like my personality and it's not so structured. Next slide. This is a lady gave me this picture on the right and said, can you make a sculpture? And I said, is it going to be stainless steel? She goes, yes. So I go, okay, how big? She goes, 7 foot. And I go, all right, 7 by 7, let's do it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I figured it out. And next slide. This is the piece of me working on it. I call it the matrix. So it's just layered stainless steel. And it was a heck of a challenge to figure this one out. But I love challenges. And I went to my friend's shop and he helped me do it. And we just figured it all out, just doing piece by piece. Next slide. And that's me on a ladder on the right side. And she wanted these circles on it. And that's the only way I can really look at it. I had to go up on a ladder, look down on it and say, does it look right? Next slide. And there's the piece. So there's the lady who wanted it, who sent me that photograph on the left. And there I am on the right. And it's 7 by 7. It weighed about 200 pounds. One hell of a challenge. I don't feel like I ever want to do one again, but I really love the piece. But it was a lot of fun. Next slide. Again, another person came to me and said, hey, can you make a pool rail? I go, I don't make pool rails, but she insisted that she knew I worked with stainless. So I made a maquette out of paper, cardboard. And on the right side, you could see it. That's thin metal stainless. I cut out and kind of put it together and showed her, do you want it to look like this? And she goes, yes, you're hired. I want the job. You do the job. I said, all right. So next slide. And there's the pool rail on the left without, we had to drain the pool. And on the right side, that's the finished product. It weighed about almost 200 pounds, 180. That metal is 3/8 inch stainless steel, polished. And we had to dig into the pool and ground it, which is something unique I never knew about, into the concrete. But again, that was a challenge that she came up to me and asked if I would do a pool rail. And I told her I feel more comfortable selling her a sculpture for, 10 or 15,000 that I do than make a pool rail. And I said, you could save, $10,000 by going and buying a typical pool rail at a store. And she goes, well, guess what? You're hired. I go, oh, geez, here we go. So again, I'm taking on challenges. I really love stainless. So I'll try anything. And I fail a lot, but I just keep pushing myself until it comes out right. Next slide.
Gary, time to wrap up.
Okay, next slide. That's another piece. And that's it. Good luck, guys. That's actually me flying out.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Very nice. And I'll open the floor for any question and answers. Unmute yourself, of course. And let's have a nice, who's going to ask the first question? You have to unmute yourself.
I will. 5 transplants?
He had a 5 organ transplant.
Oh my Lord.
Yes. His dad was exposed to Agent Orange and he knew that there was going to be an issue. So that all was, the timing was at the same time around that sculpture. And I made the sculpture knowing that he was waiting for transplant before he passed away. And he's doing well now. I mean, it's shocking.
That's amazing.
It is.
I was very impressed on how smooth you got your curves on the stainless steel, because it maybe I work with mild steel sometimes, and to try and get a nice fluid line like you've achieved is very impressive. You can give us any clues as to how to make it really smooth as you've done? Very
Yeah,
calibrated.
well, thank you. The way I do it, so the process is basically, I'll get flat bar, I'll cut, grind it, sand it, and polish it to a mirror before I even create. And whenever I'm bending it, and you see the two circles that I wrap it around, when you wrap the stainless steel very carefully, and I put rubber in between it so it doesn't dent the metal, that's how you achieve smooth curves. And you just do it slowly. I don't use heat in anything. Everything is cold bent, 1/4 inch, 3/8. I cold bend everything. And you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'd be glad to help anyone with techniques that I use. I use a lot of leverage. I make wood vices. I'm not even a good woodworker, but I figured out that, just getting 2x4s, and I made a big sculpture once and I had to use a 4x4 to twist the metal. So again, you're asking about the smooth curves. I get 2 pieces of wood, I sandwich them, and I put the metal in between it and I twist. And that's how you get those nice smooth curves. And you just do it slowly. And you just twist a little, twist a little, twist a little. And there's no secret. I mean, in that video that didn't work, I don't know why, but it actually shows you how I do it.
There was 2x4s.
Take out.
2x4s. That's a clue, good clue how to manipulate
Yes.
that.
You're welcome.
I think Alan's got a question.
I wanted to ask John how he weatherproofs outdoor wood sculptures.
That's a great question. It's a work in progress. They are the pieces, the part that touch the ground, I use pressure treated wood for. Everything else is just go in and check in on it. I put a couple of healthy coats of exterior grade spray paint on them. I try to put on a poly finish, an outdoor grade poly finish as well. And it's just see how well they hold up. In terms of wood, the Devil is the oldest one. And some of it's still the original material from the robot kangaroo version. And really the only real wear is the part where the non-pressure treated wood is in contact with the ground.
Thank you.
John, this is Tzvi. I looked at your work and it reminded me Lego creatures. Like I felt like I was about to take them apart and put them back together. Do you get the same sense?
I was actually, because when I was putting together the proposal for the Husky, I was like, well, how do I describe this? And it's realistic cartoon. But it's funny that you mentioned Legos, because as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the bandsaw, the miter saw, the table saw, the jigsaw, the pole saw, all this fancy woodworking stuff, and I'm essentially making Lego blocks. And that's how I'm putting them together. Like the demon bear and the Husky in particular, I started with the snout, and it's just layers upon layers upon layers of wood building out into the head. And it is. I'm very much inspired by Legos. The kids no longer play with them, but I still do.
We all do.
I think So Young had a question.
Yes. I want to ask Gary. It's so pleasure to meet you. I saw your piece in the gallery in Miami, and I was curious that if your piece doesn't catch the wind, and I see that you don't even using motor, but how come it has infinite movement?
So my work. So I didn't explain this, but my work sits on a pin bearing. So what I end up doing is everything is done by trial and error. And what happens with trial and error is that I just keep tweaking it. So it sits, this is a good example here, if you can see. There's a little pin bearing, I could lift it right off, right? And it just rests on there. So the momentum, when you give it a turn, the momentum will keep it moving for anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes or so. And that's just trial and error. So the weight distribution, and you go into physics, but when I create, I don't think of physics. It's pretty much just momentum, inertia, and centrifugal force. So the harder you spin it, the longer it will turn, but it may wobble, you know? So the pin bearing is the secret, and that's why it moves fluidly without, it's very minimal friction.
I have a question for you, So Young. So it sounds like I think you said earlier that you have a degree from an MFA degree from BU, but do you also have like a horticultural degree or some sort of environmental, given all the work that you do with kind of plants and mushrooms and everything else, or how do you know about all that?
I don't have any another area of degree. I studied journalism before, and like that's why I'm into more so like interesting in the solve the problem what is in this society, what we are facing on. So my interest recently moved on to environmental issues, and usually like I found all the information by YouTube, and I like to collaborate with the expert like a Chess Hing, who is already having like a full knowledge. So most of the thing is like asking the people, searching the online or YouTube, and if I couldn't solve that, collaborating with the people. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Maybe Sylvia, I've got a question for you. Just in terms, it seems like you're kind of use mostly found materials. Is that true, or do you use anything that's bought or manufactured?
Yes. It's always a combination. It's always a combination.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. I love, love going to places like Home Depot, and just walking up and down the aisles to see what'll attract my attention. But I'm also an outdoors person, so I'm always walking in the woods, and so I think what happens is I often got a conceptual concept that I'm working with, and so no matter where I am, I'm looking around for materials that will speak to me or speak to the concept, let me put it that way. And then I also, I seek out materials that speak to the concept. So I can go either way. I'm very material oriented. I can be attracted to a material, play with it to learn its characteristics, and then a concept can grow out of that, or I can have a concept already and then seek out materials that will complement the concept. So it can go either way. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I think Beta has a question. Bida, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Z, I don't mean to.
sorry.
He's supposed to be curious. Running this, and I've already stepped it. I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, I was muted. But I don't have a question, but I have a comment for Sylvia's work, because I thought it was very ethereal and I absolutely loved it. And it just happened that I am working on the series about boats, so it was very inspiring for me as well.
Thank you.
The theme is different. Mine is about, because I'm originally from Syria, and my theme is about boats being stranded between birch trees. So it's like birch trees are really saving those boats, and the boats are landing in the branches of the birch trees. But they're very similar to your boats because they're made of wire or vellum and wire. And the majestic size of yours is really inspiring. So mine are small, and I'm thinking, why don't I make them larger like yours? So that's really great. It's wonderful to see your work. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. What is your name, please? I don't see your name on the
Beda Asbridge. I'm a member of NESA as well. Beda Asbridge.
Asbridge. Okay. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to see what you're doing sometime.
Definitely, your work is stunning. I love it.
Thank you.
On that note, if you like the session, tell your friends, NESA friends about that. Tell them to get in touch with me and we'll arrange for another session. If there are no more questions, we'll conclude tonight and I appreciate
I just want to
go ahead.
say, thank you to USV. You did a great job. So thank you for running this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
We'll try
thank
to
you.
improve over time. I just
Thank
need
you.
people
Thanks
to
for having
come
me.
and sign up.
Thank you,
Thanks
Zane.
a lot,
Appreciate it.
guys. You have a
Okay.
great night.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Right.